Chain Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @QNReview. That is @CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@QNreview.com. That is INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Glasgow Times on Thursday the 13th of February 2025. From the news section. Anglers to host fishing fundraiser in Glasgow for charity. This article has been written by Sandhya Suresh and is being read by me, Corey. A group of anglers is organising a fishing fundraiser in Glasgow for a health charity. Jordan Blackshaw, Bob McMonigal and Paul Bainbridge have teamed up to host an event at Harelaw Trout Fishery in Neilston on April 5th. The initiative aims to raise funds for Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland, CHSS. The trio originally held a fishing event in December with people they met through TikTok. The success of that day inspired them to organise another, this time for a charitable cause. Mr. Blackshaw from Blantyre said, "In August of 2023, I lost a mate, Sean Darren, to cardiac arrest. We played for the same football team, Barkdykes Rovers, based in Blantyre." Mr. McMonigal from Carluke said, "We weren't really sure where to start. And then we got a picture of what charities are out there to help people with heart attacks, strokes, and that sort of thing. And that's how we landed on CHSS. The April event has space for 40 anglers on 20 boats with a £25 entry fee per angler. Proceeds from the entry fees will go to CHSS. The day will also feature a raffle and an auction, with numerous prizes up for grabs." Mr. Bainbridge from Stirling said, "We've had a lot of feedback from a few companies, other fisheries and people that tie flies and have fishing materials." Amy Russell, Community Events and Corporate Fundraiser at CHSS, said, "We wish the guys all the best for their fishing fundraiser in April, and hope that as well as catching plenty of fish, people taking part can reel in some money for CHSS. To get involved, contact the Trout About, Bits Buzzers or Fly High Tying Facebook or TikTok pages." That article was from the Glasgow Times. It was from the news section. It was written by Sandhya Suresh, and it was read by me, Corey. The Glasgow Times on Thursday the 13th of February 2025. From the news section. East Dunbartonshire residents issued warning by council. This article has been written by Morgan Carmichael, and it's being read by me, Corey. Residents are being warned ahead of applying for their 2025 green bin collection permits. East Dunbartonshire Council, EDC, has said that households can now apply for their garden waste permits, which cost £50 per bin and entitles 19 fortnightly collections from March to November. A garden waste permit must be displayed in order for the green bin to be emptied. However, Councillor Paul Ferretti, convener of the EDC's Place, Neighbourhood and Corporate Assets Committee, said that permits may take up to 14 days to arrive. He added, residents are encouraged to complete the form as soon as possible, The permit charge was introduced last year following a unanimous decision taken by the Council's meeting in December of 2023. Councillor Ferretti said, "The introduction of the charge for this non-statutory service in 2024 has allowed us to retain a garden waste collection service. Residents who choose not to apply for a permit can continue to dispose of garden waste at Mavis Valley Recycling Centre free of charge." Permits can be applied for online by visiting the Council's website at www.eastonbarton.gov.uk/garden-waste-collection. Alternatively, residents can call customer services on 0300 1234 or visit one of the Council's community hubs. It comes after garden waste permit charges have been introduced by South Lanarkshire Council. South Lanarkshire residents were furious at the announcement, with most questioning what their council tax was actually being used for. The news also follows EDC's announcement about changes to the bin schedule. We reported that residents were enraged after East Dunbartonshire Council told residents yesterday that from March 30th, grey bins will be emptied every 3 weeks as opposed to the current 2-week rota. That article was from the Glasgow Times. It was from the news section. It was written by Morgan Carmichael, and it was read by me, Corey. The Glasgow Times, on Thursday the 13th of February 2025. From the news section. Glasgow Central Mosque is now a Category A listed building. This article has been written by Esther Tarney and is being read by me, Corey. Glasgow Central Mosque is officially a Category A listed building. Historic Environment Scotland, HES, announced that the structure, including its paved courtyard with a garden, boundary walls and railing, has been placed on the registry. The only part of the building that is excluded is the early 21st century hall addition to the southwest. We reported earlier that the body was considering the move. At the time, Elizabeth McCrone, Director of Heritage at HES, said, "The Glasgow Central Mosque is a distinctive local landmark and an important building both in terms of its architecture and the role it has played in the historic development of the Scottish Muslim community. We welcome comments through our consultation on our proposal to designate the Glasgow Central Mosque, and we welcome information that can further increase our understanding of the building and its use." That article was from the Glasgow Times. It was from the news section. It was written by Esther Tarney, and it was read by me, Corey.
This is from the Glasgow Times on Friday, 14th February 2024. From the news section. Goofy, Bulldog Cross, seeks soulmate after months in Glasgow shelter. By Sandhya Suresh. A bulldog cross is looking for his forever home after being in the care of a Glasgow animal shelter since July 2023. 7-year-old Timmy, described as a playful and goofy lad, has been unable to find a permanent home after being handed over to Dogs Trust Glasgow due to being uncomfortable living with young children. The charity said that dogs stay in Dogs Trust care for around 60 days on average, but large dogs like Timmy take longer to rehome than small and medium-sized dogs. Sandra Downey, manager at Dogs Trust Glasgow, said, "All dogs want to love and be loved, and Timmy has so much love to offer when he meets his soulmate. He's very playful, so his full personality comes to the fore during playtime. Tug of war is a firm favourite, as is rolling around in the grass. Timmy can be unsure in new situations, so his perfect love match will be gentle and willing to go at his pace. Sadly, larger dogs tend to spend longer in our care, and we encourage people to look beyond a dog's size and consider adopting one of our larger dogs, as they provide the same companionship, loyalty and love as their smaller counterparts. To find out more about Timmy and other potential pets, go to www.dogstrust.org.uk/Glasgow. Dogs Trust said that Timmy is looking for a home where he is the only pet in an adult-only household. They said that multiple meetings would be required at the rehoming centre to build a strong bond before Timmy joins his forever family. The charity also said that a secure garden area where he can play and have fun would be ideal. Dogs Trust currently has more than 400 large dogs in its care, and in 2024, around 20% of all dogs handed over to the charity were large or giant in size. That article was by Sandhya Suresh. This is from the Glasgow Times on Friday, 14th February 2025. From the news section. Glasgow couple mark 43 years since first Valentine date. By Anne Fotheringham. A couple who met on Valentine's Day more than 40 years ago may well have discovered the secret of a long and happy relationship. Superfit duo Graham and Karen Pirrie, who are in their 60s, hit the gym together almost every day. The couple from Craigston are helping Glasgow Club, Scotland's largest network of health and fitness centres operated by Glasgow Life, celebrate its 25th anniversary by sharing their story. Glasgow Club currently has 36,000 direct debit members, a figure which has more than trebled since its earliest days when around 150 weekly classes were held in Glasgow City Council's sport venues. Today's members enjoy a much more extensive, flexible programme of more than 1,000 classes a week. Karen, 61, who is a podiatrist, said, "I have been going to Bellahouston since about 1990. Keeping fit and active has always been important to me, and when my kids were young, the creche was really useful. I'm there now almost every day. The teachers are just fantastic. I've worked with the same girls for years, and the friendliness makes it a really lovely community." She added, "Now Graham comes too. It's part of our routine, something we go to do together as a couple, so that's really lovely." Karen and Graham met in September 1981 at the Glasgow School of Chiropody, now podiatry. We sat beside each other in the clinics as the placements were in alphabetical order. Karen's maiden name is O'Reilly, explained Graham. Our first date was February 14th, 1992, and we got married on July 1987. Graham, a trades union official for the Royal College of Podiatry, said, "I was never really into the gym and preferred outdoor sports like tennis, but Karen always said I don't know what I was missing. She was right. I really enjoy classes now and definitely feel the benefit. I'm a great believer in the saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. And keeping active is even more of a priority now I'm in my 60s. That article was an exclusive by Anne Fotheringham. This is from the Glasgow Times on Friday, 14th February 2025, from the news section. Super Granny wins GB gold medals for brutal swimming, by Kirsty Feerick. A super granny won 3 gold medals and a world title after braving freezing swimming challenges. Tricia Harvey took home top prizes for both GB Championships and World Ice Championships as she raced in brutal cold waters. The 65-year-old from Thornton Hall made headlines last year for completing a tough ice mile swim that made her the oldest woman in the world to hold down the accomplishment. Now she has shared her latest achievements as she took on the icy waters again. Tricia, who is known as Mamo to her family, which is an Irish word that means grandmother, told us the secret to her success is her mindset. She said, "I was so proud of myself. I thought both of the events were a fantastic experience. I had no idea I would qualify for the Worlds, but since I performed so well at GB, they invited me. It was so nice to be asked, and I thought I might as well try. I think the trick is that it is a mental mindset you need to overcome. Even when you think about giving up, you just remind yourself you can do it." It was the coldest temperatures I have ever swam in. I was shivering a lot when I got out, and then to find out I had won gold was amazing. It felt great, but I am glad it is done now. It takes a toll on you, but it was worth it. Tricia went to the IISA GB Championships in Rother Valley last December, swimming 1,000 metres and 500 metres in water temperatures around 5 degrees. She achieved a personal best and 2 golds for both distances in her age group. This allowed her to qualify to represent Great Britain for the IISA World Ice Championships in Malveno last month. Tricia was pushed to her limits in the pool's icy clear waters that were just 1.9 degrees. She took on the challenge and won gold in the 1,000 metres and bronze in the 500 metres for her age group of 65 to 69. Now she has no plans to stop competing and is preparing to go back to the championships in the next few years. Tricia said, "Each morning the organisers had to remove the ice from the pool to allow the events to take place. This left me having a couple of sleepless nights before each of the 2 events, as I have never swum that long in such low temperatures." The event had a really strong sense of community. All the participants supported each other with encouragement from the poolside and camaraderie among swimmers. The volunteers' dedication also made the atmosphere really positive. I plan to be back in 2 years' time when the event has been held in Megève in France. The oldest swimmer was 85, so hopefully I have a few more championship swims in me. That article was an exclusive by Kirsty Feerick.
Glasgow Times News on Monday the 17th of February. BBC Scotland presenter reveals Alzheimer's diagnosis. An article written by Ava White. A well-known broadcaster has announced that she's been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's disease. Janice Forsyth, an award-winning BBC Scotland presenter, revealed her diagnosis in a recent statement after first suffering symptoms in 2022. The arts and culture presenter stated that the news came as a huge blow, but also gave her some relief, as she'd been experiencing deep feelings of anxiety and finding some tasks to be challenging. Ms Forsyth explained that she had just hoped it was exhaustion from spending many years as a broadcaster, but she now has a firm diagnosis. She says, "Some of you may have noticed that I've been absent from your radios for a while, and I feel it's time now to let everyone know the reason. From 2022, I'd been experiencing deep feelings of anxiety and finding some tasks, especially navigation, extremely difficult. I'd hoped that I was simply worn out by my many years as a freelance broadcaster and perhaps exhausted following the loss of our dear mother, Patricia, the previous Christmas. But sadly, I now have a firm diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's disease. It's been a huge blow, but I'm also feeling some relief that I finally have an explanation for lapses I've been experiencing, and I'm managing to remain buoyant most of the time. As much as I've loved seeking out and sharing the best of music, literature, theatre and cinema with you, I'm happy now to have the time and freedom to enjoy all of these simply for my own pleasure. Call it living in the moment, and you won't be far off." The 65-year-old stated that she is not done yet, as she plans to continue with The Big Light, a podcast production company that she founded 5 years ago with Fiona White. She also thanked NHS Scotland for their care and noted that she will be coming off of social media for now. Janice added, "On another positive note, I've been able to continue to contribute to The Big Light, the podcast production company I founded 5 years ago with Fiona White. The company is going from strength to strength, and we're excited for more to come. I'm not done yet. Finding the cause of my trouble took a while, but I at least now know what's been happening, and I'm grateful for lovely friends and family, as well as for fine post-diagnosis care from NHS Scotland. Dear listener, I never took my role lightly, and I hope I always give my best, both for your sake and that of my interviewees. It's been a blast, and I send a high five to everyone who tuned in on Saturday mornings or on more recent weekday afternoons and heard something interesting. For reasons of privacy and mental health, I plan to withdraw from social media for now, and I wish you all well." Ms Forsyth has worked for the BBC for more than 3 decades, mostly at BBC Radio Scotland and sometimes on television, as well as on BBC Radio 5, BBC Radio 4 and BBC Radio 3. Between 2013 and early 2024, she presented programmes including The Culture Studio, which then became The Janice Forsyth Show, and The Afternoon Show. Louise Thornton, Head of Commissioning at BBC Scotland, said, "Janice has been a hugely popular personality on our airwaves for many years. The many production teams she's collaborated with have appreciated her outstanding skill as a presenter on radio and on television. Her warmth, relaxed interviewing style and peerless knowledge of the arts, music and culture in Scotland and beyond have made her a firm favourite with audiences over the decades. Everyone at BBC Scotland wishes Janice all the very best and will be pleased to continue to explore suitable opportunities where we can work together." An article written by Ava White. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 17th of February. Council reveals a plan to tackle head-on the struggles of fuel poverty. An article written by Stuart McConnell. Council chiefs and energy bosses have joined forces in a bid to help people tackle head-on the struggles of fuel poverty. A new partnership has been set up to tackle the rising problem, which affects around 25% of households across South Lanarkshire. And with energy prices having increased recently, it's hoped that this will be of great benefit to those who need advice and support the most. Leader of the council, Joe Fagan, said, "Our partnership project with Scotland's gas network operator SGN has come at the right time, with average energy prices increasing in January of this year by 1.2%. This partnership between the Council's Money Matters Advice Service and SGN will increase the availability of advice and assistance for South Lanarkshire's residents who are struggling with rising energy bills and keeping their heating on this winter. The Council's Money Matters Advice Service is free and confidential, helping people claim benefits and deal with debt, providing unbiased advice, and will work with you by discussing all your options. South Lanarkshire residents can either complete a form or call the Community Wellbeing Team on 0300 029 0041. 0300 029 0041. An in-person service can also be arranged with the community hubs across South Lanarkshire. SGN is also providing energy crisis support to help residents stay safe and warm at home by saving on energy, reducing usage and support with paying your bills. Margaret Hamilton, Community Partnership Manager at SGN, welcomed the initiative. She said, "We're delighted to be partnering with South Lanarkshire Council to provide our essential energy support and safeguarding service to households. South Lanarkshire Council is seeing firsthand the impact the cost of living crisis is having on those with families struggling to afford to maintain a safe and warm home. This new partnership will support households in the communities we serve use energy safely, efficiently and affordably to help address fuel poverty and the challenges that they face." The most recent Scottish Housing Condition Survey shows that in South Lanarkshire, 22% of all local authority households are in fuel poverty, with this figure rising to 36% of all other social landlord households and 35% for private sector households. And 9% of all local authority households are in extreme fuel poverty, with that figure rising to 11% for all other social landlord households and 20% for private sector households. An article written by Stuart McConnell. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 17th of February. Glasgow Life accused of flouting historic deeds of a city library. An exclusive front page article written by Morgan Carmichael. A city councillor is accusing Glasgow Life of flouting historic deeds. Councillor Dan Hutchison of the Scottish Greens says that the charity, which is an arm's-length body of Glasgow City Council, has disregarded Isabella Ure Elder's Deed of Gift, which is a written document between parties regarding Elder Park and its library. When Mrs. Elder's husband, the industrialist John Elder, died in 1869, she built the Elder Park Library and gifted it to the people of Govan. The Deed of Gift and the Declaration of Trust were signed between Mrs. Elder and Glasgow corporations, in which she stated that the library must be open on Sundays. Having seen the deeds, the Glasgow Times can confirm that Mrs. Elder wrote the following: "It's hereby expressly stipulated that the library shall remain open to the public on Sundays as well as on weekdays." However, Elder Park Library is currently only open Monday to Saturday. Speaking to the Glasgow Times, Mr. Hutchison said, "This is not an expensive thing to fix, but it is an important thing. I know it'll cost a bit more to open on a Sunday, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's too much to ask. Glasgow Life could find the money to do this. There is absolutely enough." Mr. Hutchison went on to detail the importance of having the library open on Sundays, especially to give much-needed facilities to the community and support local children. He continued, "The library is a phenomenal community asset. It provides facilities for people to use if they are at the nearby play park and allows children to access books and computers. A lot of children learn stuff from social media nowadays, and we want them to access factual information, like via a non-fiction book that they can get from the library. It's really important to have that option." Mr. Hutchison added, "A member of the Govan Community Council said he remembered using the library as a child. It was a place he would go to hide away from the cold. To this day, it remains a place for people to drop in for some warmth." Locals in the area are discontented with the Sunday closure, according to Mr. Hutchison. He said, "There is a frustration locally regarding the opening hours of the library, namely, it is not open 7 days a week. This was all brought to my attention at the end of the summer, when a member of the Friends of Elder Park group told us about the deed in place by Isabella. When we spoke with the other residents, though, they all said that they could never remember a time when it was open on Sundays, even the older ones. So this has been abandoned in the past, and Glasgow Life has kept it up. I can't really point and say someone made that decision. Someone has, but I don't know who. We've had mass industrialisation and 2 world wars since then, but something has caused it and we should fix it. In response, Glasgow Life reflected on the £4 million transformation of the library, which took place last June. The upgrades included a full refurbishment of the interior and exterior, a new community kitchen, more toilets, improved baby changing facilities and more bookable areas for people to use. Glasgow City Council approved the revamp plans back in 2022. A spokesperson for Glasgow Life said, Elder Park Library's refurbishment created a well-used modern community asset that will be a resource for local people for generations to come. Opening hours are the same now as they were before the highly successful modernisation began. Any change to opening hours means increased costs and needs to be funded, either from new sources or redirecting existing budgets. An exclusive front-page article written by Morgan Carmichael. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 17th of February. Glasgow-based company aims to send rockets into space. An article written by Ben Wardell. A Scottish company aims to send its rockets into space from 2026, following on from an attempt at a suborbital launch later this year. Skyrora is building its first 23-metre rocket called XL at a factory in Cumbernauld in North Lanarkshire, with the goal of sending small satellites into space. An attempt to launch a smaller rocket called Skylark from Iceland failed in October 2022, when a software problem led to it falling into the sea just after liftoff. Multiple companies are working to become the first to launch satellites into space from European soil, with several planning on using Saxevord Spaceport on the Shetland Islands. At least 2 hope to carry out launches by the end of this year, while a spaceport in Norway is also preparing for a launch attempt. Germany's RFA company is thought to have the most advanced plans, and it was officially licensed for spaceflight by the regulator last month. Alan Thompson, Skyrora's head of government affairs, said that the Glasgow-based company is keen to carry out its next flight attempt from the UK, where its factory and testing site are based. He said that the firm hopes to launch Skylark, which will not deploy satellites into space, as a proof of concept from Saxevord around this summer, though discussions with the spaceport's owners are ongoing. Alan said, "We're hoping to get the fire testing done by the end of the year. If we're fortunate, then hopefully we'll get launch windows for next year for the XL rocket." He said that 2026 is the realistic timescale for launching XL, which can carry up to 315 kilograms to a sun-synchronous orbit. Its first stage will use 9 engines firing together, and Skyrora aims to do its first test firing of the full stage in the second half of this year. Ultimately, the company wants to achieve a regular schedule of launches, going from 2 or 3 initially to as many as 6 after a few years. Mr. Thompson told Westminster's Scottish Affairs Committee earlier this month that the company had chosen Iceland as the site of its first launch attempt due to regulatory delays in the UK, saying that it had got tired of waiting. An article written by Ben Wardell. Glasgow Times on Monday the 17th of February. Lifestyle. The Rocky Horror Show returns to Glasgow in June 2026. An article written by Sandhya Suresh. The Rocky Horror Show is set to return to Glasgow next year. The production will be at the Pavilion Theatre from June the 8th to June the 13th. Tickets are now on sale at www.rockyhorror.co.uk. The show is fresh from its most successful tour in its more than 50-year history, with more than 250,000 people attending since the tour started in August last year. This has resulted in ticket sales exceeding £10 million at the box office. The blockbuster tour, starring Jason Donovan as Dr. Frankenfurter, achieved its biggest ever weekly sale in Edinburgh last month, with more than 18,000 people attending the Playhouse Theatre, generating over £750,000 at the box office. The show features all the famous musical numbers that have made the Rocky Horror Show a hit for 50 years, including Sweet Transvestite, Science Fiction Double Feature, Damn It Janet, and The Time Warp. It combines science fiction, horror, comedy and music while encouraging audience participation. The Rocky Horror Show tells the story of Brad and his fiancée Janet, two college children who meet Dr. Frankenfurter by chance when their car breaks down outside his house. The Rocky Horror Show first began in 1973 before an audience of just 63 people at the Royal Courts Theatre upstairs. It was an immediate success and has since become the longest continuous run of a contemporary musical anywhere in the world. The show has been seen by more than 30 million people worldwide in more than 30 countries, and it's been translated into 20 languages. An article written by Sandhya Suresh. Glasgow Times, on Monday the 17th of February. Lifestyle. Two historic Clyde-built ships to meet in a rare rendezvous. An exclusive article written by Anne Fotheringham. This is a tale of two ships, both built on the River Clyde. The paddle steamer Waverley, the last sea-going paddle steamer in the world, and the steamship Shield Hall have different stories and have overcome many challenges. Later this year, the two vessels will meet for a rare and historic rendezvous. The famous paddle steamer, which is still a much-loved sight in Glasgow and around the Clyde coast, was launched on a cold and misty morning in October 1946. Its maiden voyage, around 8 months later, was reported in our sister newspaper, The Herald. The new Waverley, a two-funnelled paddle steamer of modern streamlined design, replaces the popular old Waverley, which was bombed and sunk by enemy aircraft during the evacuation from Dunkirk, said the report. She brings the Clyde fleet to a total of 4, still one short of the pre-war number. It added, in command is Captain J.E. Cameron, DEC, who served on board the Waverley's predecessor as navigating officer at Dunkirk. The Waverley was later sold for £1 to the Paddle Steamer Preservation Society, who look after it still. In her first year, the Waverley operated the route she was primarily intended for, up Loch Long and Loch Goil, to the villages of Loch Goil Head and Aracha. The 1960s saw a change in holiday habits. The lure of travelling abroad led to a decline in passenger numbers on the Clyde paddle steamers and the closure of many smaller piers. By 1973, the Waverley, for this year only, operated by Caledonian McBrain, was the last sea-going paddle steamer in the world, and in the September of that year she was withdrawn from service. Her future was uncertain until CalMac announced that it had offered the ship to the Paddle Steamer Preservation Society for just £1. The sale went ahead and the Waverley was officially handed over to the Waverley Steam Navigation Company Limited, a company formed by the Paddle Steamer Preservation Society at the James Watt Dock in Greenock on the 8th of August 1974. On May the 22nd, 1975, the Waverley returned to service from Anderston Quay in Glasgow, and the send-off was magnificent. Glasgow Police Pipe Band played from the quayside, and those aboard included local VIPs and many who had helped in some way to return the Waverley to service. It was the start of her second career as one of the country's best-loved tourist attractions. The Waverley's £7 million heritage rebuild took place in 2 phases in 2000 and 2003, during which she received 2 new boilers, a new lounge and crew accommodation, plus improvements to meet modern safety standards, and a return to her original 1947 livery. On May the 10th, 2019, it was announced that the Waverley was being withdrawn from service again and would need new boilers if she was to sail again. The Save the Waverley boiler refit appeal raised £2.3 million, thanks to donations from more than 8,500 people, plus support from the Paddle Steamer Preservation Society, the Heritage Lottery Fund and other trusts, foundations and local authorities. Following delays due to COVID-19, the Waverley eventually returned to service in August of 2020. The steamship Shield Hall was built further along the Clyde at Lobnitz and Company in Renfrew in 1955. Her hull and superstructure are as they were when she was built. Her boilers and steam engines are original and of a similar configuration to those of far earlier vessels, such as the Titanic. The Shield Hall is one of the very few active vessels worldwide that can demonstrate the steam technology which eclipsed sailing ships in maritime trade. The Shield Hall's unusual combination of riveted and welded joints is illustrative of the transition in shipbuilding methods after the Second World War. The ship has 2 triple expansion steam engines, steam-operated auxiliary engines, operating pumps, fans and deck machinery, all powered by 2 oil-fired Scotch boilers. The technology dates to the late 1800s and was widely used on merchant ships until the 1960s. Surviving vessels with this technology are invariably static. The Shield Hall is one of a few that can be experienced in operation. She was originally used by Glasgow Corporation to take treated sludge to dumping grounds near the Firth of Clyde. She performed a similar task for Southern Water between 1980 and 1985 before being withdrawn from service because of rising fuel costs. The Shield Hall, which is included in the National Historic Fleet, was bought by the Solent Steam Packet Charity in 1988, who continue to operate her to this day. On September the 13th this year, to mark the Shield Hall's 70th year afloat, the 2 ships will meet in a rare moment to steam together in the Solent on the south coast of England. The special rendezvous will see the Waverley and the Shield Hall head west in tandem towards Cowes on the Isle of Wight. The Shield Hall's chairman, Martin Phipps, said, "The sight of the 2 Glasgow icons steaming on the Solent is sure to bring back wonderful memories for many people. It'll be a fitting way to mark the final steaming weekend for the Shield Hall in our 70th anniversary year." You can visit the Waverley and the Shield Hall websites for details of their 2025 sailing programmes. An exclusive article written by Anne Fotheringham. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 17th of February. More homes to be bought by a council to accommodate homeless people. An article written by Drew Sandilands. More homes to temporarily accommodate homeless people will be bought by East Renfrewshire Council after a £1 million investment was agreed. The council's spend on hotels to house homeless families has soared in recent years, with £1.3 million used in 2023-2024. When a housing emergency was declared in September, councillors committed £1 million to purchase properties as part of efforts to ease pressure on homelessness services. Now, Cabinet members have approved the use of another £1 million from a one-off reserve to buy more homes. An official said that the aim of the investment is to reduce the number of homeless families housed in temporary accommodation and to increase access to affordable housing. There's also a financial benefit in terms of reducing the cost of temporary accommodation, she added. Funding is being used from an Investment for the Future pot, which was set up with an estimated £12.6 million available due to a temporary reduction in employers' contributions to the Strathclyde Pension Fund in 2024-2025 and also in 2025-2026. Around £2.7 million had already been allocated for 2024-2025, and councillors agreed plans to share out a further £3.7 million last week. As well as the £1 million housing investment, money will be spent on surveying the conditions of council buildings, supporting community groups and developing worker skills. In September, the projected overspend on homeless accommodation for 2024-2025 was reported as £1.5 million, against a £545,000 budget. A report from council officials stated that the plans to bring existing properties under council ownership allows us to offer more diverse property types that meet the varying needs of our families experiencing homelessness. It added that the council can only recover 12% of the cost of using hotels due to reduced housing benefit subsidy and high costs. whereas it can recover around 80% of the costs with council-owned accommodation. 5 properties are currently being acquired using the initial £1 million, with 2 more under consideration. The extra investment will allow the council to add to these properties. Councillor Danny Devlin said that the extra £1 million for homeless accommodation is a fantastic idea. He said that there was a commitment from the council's administration to reduce homelessness in East Renfrewshire. Council leader Owen O'Donnell added, "I would like to recognise the support of all council members on this initiative. This was unanimously agreed at the Budget Strategy Group and unanimously agreed when the first £1 million went to council for approval before." The planned property conditions survey will assess 220 non-domestic buildings owned by East Renfrewshire Council, including schools, offices, leisure centres and libraries. Condition data on roofs, walls, windows, heating systems and electrics will be used to prioritise investment. The survey project is expected to cost £500,000. Around £1.2 million will be used on community capacity building, which includes training staff who work with local communities. Officials reported that the aim is to grow the types of local groups that our communities need: older people's friendship groups, parents groups, groups for members of the community with additional support needs, for example. It'll be used to help support key local community groups to be well organised, well run and well placed to access external funding opportunities, the report added. Another £1 million will be spent on employee well-being and development to develop skills and learning opportunities both for existing and new staff, and to make us a more attractive employer in the recruitment market. Officials added that the funding would help upskill workers and address absence and stress in the workforce by supporting a culture change so that managers improve in their confidence and ability to manage sickness and well-being matters, which will ultimately reduce cost and increase capacity. An article written by Drew Sandilands. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 17th of February. Police issue a fresh appeal after a Glasgow teen is murdered. An article written by Kirsty Fierig. Police have issued a fresh appeal after a Glasgow teen was murdered. Kevin Wilson was killed in what was believed to be a targeted attack on February the 7th, 2015. Now, 10 years later, police are still searching for answers over a cruel and senseless crime that left the 17-year-old's family devastated. Kevin was shot in the back with a single bullet from a 9mm Russian Baikal automatic pistol and left to die on Wavertree Street in Liverpool. Detectives believe that he was lured to the scene and are still determined to find the culprit and bring justice to Kevin's loved ones, reports the Liverpool Echo. They're urging for anyone with information to come forward, as there are people out there who know exactly what happened. Head of the Serious Crime Review Unit, Kevin Clegg, said, "Although 10 years have now passed since Kevin's murder, we are still determined to find this killer. This was a cruel and senseless crime that left a family devastated, and they're still looking for answers a decade later. We understand that with every year that passes, Kevin's family have still not had the justice that they deserve. We know the answers to solving this and bringing the killer to justice lives within our communities, and I would ask that people put themselves in the shoes of Kevin's family. How would they feel if they knew that their loved one's killer was still free and walking the streets? There are people out there who know exactly what happened on that night, and we need them to find the courage to do the right thing by coming forward and speaking up. You may have previously felt unwilling to come forward, but as the years go by, allegiances change, people move away, and may now feel more comfortable coming forward. Any piece of information could be the key to progressing this investigation, however trivial you think it may be. We know that people can be reluctant or fearful in coming forward, but please rest assured that there are special measures that we can put in place to protect witnesses. If you have any information, please call 101 or contact Crime Stoppers UK anonymously. An article written by Kirsty Fierig.
From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday the 18th of February 2025. From the news section. Baby died from infection caused by putrid Glasgow hospital. And this article was written by Ben Waddle. The mother of a newborn baby who died in a Glasgow intensive care unit has told an inquiry her daughter passed away from an infection caused by an absolutely putrid hospital. Sophia Smith was just 11 days old when she died at the Royal Hospital for Children, RHC, at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, QEUH campus in Glasgow on April the 11th, 2017. The newborn became ill with an infection similar to MRSA, which developed into sepsis. In 2020, Sophia's case was handed over to the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, COPFC, which earlier this year announced a fatal accident inquiry, FAI, into her death. A statement released via lawyers on behalf of Sophia's bereaved parents as the inquiry began on Monday read, "It has been a long road to get to the milestone that we have reached today. We are pleased that an FAI has been finally set up and hope that by the end of this process we will know the truth about our daughter and why her life was so tragically and heartbreakingly short." Sheriff Joanna MacDonald opened the inquiry at Glasgow Sheriff Court with a statement expressing her deepest sympathies and condolences to Sophia's parents on the tragic death of their daughter. Sophia was born at the Royal Alexandra Hospital in Paisley, Renfrewshire on March the 31st, 2017. The inquiry heard that following her birth, Sophia had difficulty breathing and a possible heart issue, so she was transferred to the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, NICU, at the RHC. There she was placed in an incubator with one-to-one nursing care and a raft of machinery next to her cot. She was also given antibiotics via lines into her body, initially in her abdomen and then in her left foot. Despite a massive improvement, with parents Teresa and Matthew Smith being led to believe she would be home in a matter of weeks, on April the 10th, Sophia's health suddenly deteriorated. The inquiry heard she had turned an ashen colour, and by April the 11th, her lower body had turned coal black. She was found to have suffered a massive pulmonary hemorrhage, bleeding on the lung, and despite efforts to save her, she died at 5:48 p.m. on April the 11th. Samples taken on April the 10th and 11th both tested positive for Staphylococcus aureus SA, which was later confirmed as PVL-MSSA. The inquiry held that this bacterium had caused serious infection if it enters the body, such as through medical lines and catheters. Giving evidence, Mrs. Smith said she had endured 8 years of absolute hell since her daughter's death, and that she had to live every day of her life knowing she was no longer here. "I want to know what happened to my baby," she said. "I want to know why she's not here playing with her brothers and sisters." She added, "She's dead. I live every day of my life knowing she's dead, knowing that absolutely putrid hospital caused an infection in my child and killed her. And when it killed her, it killed me too. I want to know what happened." She also questioned how, despite one-to-one care, hospital staff failed to spot the infection or see the rapid deterioration in her baby. She also said that because Sophia was in an incubator, she had been unable to touch her. She instead had to watch as nurses got to curl their fingers in her hair. "When she died in my arms, it was the first time I had ever held her," she said. In their evidence, she and her husband also described the subsequent struggle to get answers about the source of their daughter's infection. Stonewalling, the missing of documents when requested, the fight to have meetings arranged, Mr. Smith said. It's having to be the ones who are pushing it forward for more information. 8 years later, we are still looking for similar answers to questions posed in 2017. The inquiry heard that in meetings in June 2017, the bereaved parents pressed hospital staff on the cause of the infection. In his affidavit, Mr. Smith said they were told the staff didn't know where she got the infection from. He continued, Dr. Jonathan Coates said he had never seen it before, and when pressed he said it was just bad luck. In her evidence, Mrs. Smith added Dr. Coates had said, in his opinion, the speed with which the infection took hold of their daughter indicated it was from the arterial line in Sophia's body. She said when he was asked what would have happened had Sophia not contracted the infection, he said he would have expected her to go on to live a very full life. An inspection of the hospital in September 2016 did not identify any infection issues, but the NICU was not inspected. A further inspection in January 2019 looked at the NICU but did not focus on insertable lines. The latter inspection found some non-compliance with standard infection control precautions at the hospital, but these were not recorded as relating specifically to the NICU. In 2021, the case was transferred to the Health and Safety Investigations Unit to be considered alongside and as part of an ongoing investigation into 4 deaths at the QEUH as a result of infections linked to the built environment of the hospital. However, the investigation found no evidence that Sophia's infection was linked to those other infections. The inquiry continues. And that article was by Ben Waddell. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 18th of February 2025, from the news section. Early release of almost 400 prisoners in Scotland begins. And this article was written by Jodie Harrison. The first of up to 390 prisoners are being released early as the Scottish Government attempts to tackle overcrowding in the country's prisons. Emergency legislation passed by MSPs in November will change the release point for those serving prison sentences of less than 4 years from 50% of their sentence to 40%. The Scottish Government said it expects the change to bring about a 5% reduction in the prison population. Prisoners will be released in 3 tranches, with the first starting on Tuesday and ending on Thursday. The second tranche will take place from March the 4th to the 6th, and the third will take place from March the 18th to the 20th. Those convicted of domestic abuse or sexual offences will not be released early under the changes. Justice Secretary Angela Constance said the release of prisoners was needed to battle the high prison population. She said those being released were serving a wide range of sentences, including for violent crimes and crimes of dishonesty. She told the BBC's Good Morning Scotland programme, "It is fair to say that in terms of crimes of violence, that it is not an insignificant proportion of people serving short-term sentences. But the important point, and the raison d'etre of this legislation, is that we need to achieve a sustained reduction in the prison population that is necessary to ensure that our prisons can continue to accommodate those who pose the greatest risk of harm, and also to support rehabilitation in order to reduce reoffending. There is an inextricable link between the work that goes on in prisons and the safety of our community. The change comes amid warnings from prison bosses of critical challenges as a result of the rising numbers of inmates. First Minister John Swinney said last year that prisons were absolutely bursting at the seams, with more than 8,300 people behind bars, above the target operating capacity of 8,007. Some 477 prisoners were already released early as part of an emergency move to ease overcrowding in the summer. Dozens of those went on to reoffend and were later put back behind bars. Within months of that release scheme, prisons had begun to struggle with overcrowding again. The Justice Secretary said the previous release of prisoners provided temporary respite only, while current measures would result in an immediate and sustained reduction in the prison population. And that article was by Jodie Harrison. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 18th of February 2025, from the news section. Warning issued due to yellow weather warning for Glasgow. And this article was written by Ben Waddle. A travel warning has been issued due to a yellow weather warning across Greater Glasgow. The Met Office has implemented a yellow warning for snow and ice for Glasgow and the west of Scotland from 3 a.m. until 12 p.m. on Tuesday, February the 18th. Due to the predicted adverse weather conditions, ScotRail is urging passengers to take care when travelling due to slippery surfaces. They said teams will be out working to grit surfaces in the affected areas. A ScotRail spokesperson said, "A yellow Met Office weather warning is in place today until noon, impacting southwestern areas of Scotland. Snow and freezing rain may make some surfaces slippery. Please take extra care when travelling. Teams will be working to treat surfaces in affected areas." A spokesperson for the Met Office said, "Snow and freezing rain may make for difficult driving conditions, especially over higher routes. Snow flurries will probably turn heavier for a time during Tuesday morning, leading to a covering of snow in some places. Most likely in the 0 to 1% range in lowland areas, whilst 1 to 5 centimetres is possible in places above 200 metres. In addition, freezing rain, especially in the southern part of the region, is likely to cause icy surfaces in a few places and could make for difficult driving conditions even on treated roads. Freezing rain and snow is expected to ease by Tuesday afternoon, with conditions improving." And that article was by Ben Waddle, read by me, Caroline. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 18th of February 2025, from the lifestyle section. Absolutely gutted. Clydebank pub announces sudden closure. And this article was written by Emily Moore. A pub in Clydebank has suddenly closed after the announcement was made last night. The Horse and Barge on Dumbarton Road has taken the decision to shut up shop with immediate effect following a tough time. In a statement posted on Facebook, the owner said, "As of today, we are closed for business. Unfortunately, working under a brewery has been tough, and we have made the decision to close as a result. We would like to thank you for all your custom." The Dalmuir pub previously closed its doors in October 2022 after X-rated pics leaked online which seemed to show 3 people engaging in a late-night sex act on the pool table while it was run by its previous owners. The pub later reopened in 2023 after a new tenant was found and had a year and a half of running before the announcement to close was made on Monday, February 17th. Gutted pubgoers have taken to social media to share their upset at the decision. One said, Sad but not surprising. I had hoped that the people who went elsewhere would make their way back, but apart from a few of us, it didn't happen. Thanks and best wishes to all the brilliant staff. Another commented, absolutely gutted, great boozer with the best punters, gonna miss them. A third added, sad, it's a tough time for the pub industry just now, all the best to the staff. And that article was by Emily Moore. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 18th of February 2025, from the Lifestyle section. Donate pre-loved books at Asda's Glasgow stores today. And this article was written by Sanya Suresh. Asda has relaunched its in-store book donation points in all of its Glasgow stores. The initiative, in partnership with the Children's Book Project, aims to help families access books. Customers can donate pre-loved children's books in store, which will be gifted to families with fewer books. To find participating stores near you, go online to tinyurl.com//2Y8DB484. Since the partnership began in September 2024, Asda customers have donated more than 100,000 books. This has allowed every child in 140 primary schools nationwide to choose and take home 2 free books. For many, these are the first books they have ever owned. The relaunch involves all in-store book donation points across the UK, including all stores in Scotland. To mark the relaunch, Asda Community Champions will host reading activities and bring storytelling magic to life in stores and local communities in partnership with the BBC's Tiny Happy People. The Children's Book Project aims to tackle book poverty in childhood by gifting surplus new and pre-loved books to children with few of their own. From February the 14th, more than 388 Asda superstores invited local families to donate books they have outgrown. These will be placed in a dedicated donation trolley hosted by the store's community champion. The two organisations expect to give a further 50,000 children the chance to participate in celebratory book gifting festivals where they can choose and take home books of their own. Carolyn Francis, National Charity Coordinator at Asda, said, "Last year our customers donated over 100,000 pre-loved books across Asda stores that were then redistributed back into local communities. All children should be able to access a book without the cost being a barrier." Liberty Venn, founder and Chief Executive Officer of Children's Book Project, said, "The support that Asda families have already shown for our work is incredible. It shows just how much parents understand the potential for the books they enjoyed with their children to make another child laugh or dream and to create shared reading opportunities at home." And that article was by Sanya Suresh. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 18th of February 2025, from the Lifestyle section. Glasgow care home resident teaches staff how to play drafts. And this article was written by Sanya Suresh. A Glasgow care home resident has been teaching staff how to play drafts. James Nelson, known as Jim, who lives at HC1, Scotland's Darnley Court care home, has been a keen drafts player since he was a teenager. He was taught how to play by his wife's father when they first met in high school and continued to play throughout his marriage. Jim also enjoys playing dominoes, crosswords and board games to keep his mind active. Karen Wallace, Wellbeing Coordinator at Darnley Court, recently discovered a drafts board at the care home and revealed to Jim that she had never played before. Jim immediately offered to teach her. This led to multiple staff members at the care home learning the game, which is also known as checkers. Karen said, "Jim takes so much pleasure in teaching me how to play drafts. Since my first game, Jim has also taught Darnley Court carers how to play. The game is played on a square board with 64 squares, alternating between light and dark colours. Each player starts with 12 pieces, usually black and white, placed on the dark squares of the board. The goal of the game is to capture or block the opponent's pieces so they can't move, or to reach the opponent's back row, turning a piece into a king." And that article was written by Sanya Suresh.
This is from the Glasgow Times on the 19th of February 2025 from the news section, and the headline reads, Glasgow's M8 left closed following emergency incident. This article was by Ben Waddle. Glasgow's M8 was left closed for hours following an emergency incident last night. Police were called to a 5-vehicle crash on the motorway's westbound carriageway at junction 19, Anderston Interchange, at 8:50 p.m. on Tuesday, February 18th. Emergency crews raced to the scene, where officers then shut the road whilst the motors were recovered. The force didn't reveal if anyone was injured during the collision. However, the road reopened shortly before 11 p.m. A spokesperson for Police Scotland said, "We received reports of a road crash involving 5 vehicles on M8 at J19 westbound, Glasgow, around 8:50 p.m. on Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. Officers attended and the road was closed while vehicles were recovered. It reopened around 10:55 p.m. This article was by Ben Waddle. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 19th of February 2025 from the news section, and the headline reads, New mural appears on Glasgow city centre street. This article is by Lucy Jackson. A mural has popped up in the city centre in response to the current conflict in Gaza. Artist Sean Devaney painted the new artwork earlier this month, which has appeared on the corner of West Nile Street and Bath Street. Devaney said the artwork was a comment on the general disconnect and apathy that's been shown in the face of insanity we've all been watching on our phones for the past year, referring to Israel's attacks on Gaza since the events of October 7th, 2023. In a post on Instagram, he said, "The idea was to make a scene that was chaotic and then juxtapose an old guy just sitting, not really paying attention to what's going on around him." While he was painting the mural, he spoke to many people who were interested in what he was doing and the subject he was depicting. He told the Glasgow Times, "I was explaining what the piece was about, and I heard that many people felt the same way about the state of the world just now." He added that while there have been protests in the city showing solidarity with Palestine, there was a general apathy and that the situation was going on, but people were doing nothing about it. This article was by Lucy Jackson. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 19th of February 2025 from the news section, and the headline reads, NHS workers angered over delay in working week reduction. This article was by Morgan Carmichael. NHS workers have been left angered after Scotland's Health Secretary has pulled the rug from under them. It was revealed this week that Neil Gray announced a delay in introducing the reduction of the working week for NHS staff. The move, which was set to be introduced last year, was designed to see the likes of nurses, midwives and paramedics receive a reduction of 30 minutes in their working week from April 1st, 2024. However, the Health Secretary has now announced that the reduction will not come into force until April 2026. In a correspondence seen by the Glasgow Times, Gray said the following to Matt McLaughlin, Unison Scotland co-lead for health. I am incredibly grateful for the efforts of you and your colleagues to support the delivery of the first 30-minute reduction in the working week. I would also like to thank you and other STAC members for a meeting with me to provide your input on how we roll out the remaining reduction in the working week to 36 hours, agreed as part of the 2023-24 pay deal. In coming to a decision as to when and how this additional hour should be reduced, I have fully considered your position and arguments put forward in relation to the range of implementation possibilities. Having taken these into account, alongside the other advice I have received, I have decided that the remaining 60-minute reduction will come into effect on April 1st, 2026. Based on all of the advice received, I have concluded that this is the option that is safest for both patients and staff and will support the continued recovery of service. Delivery on this timetable will allow us to ensure the reduction can be achieved without any extra burden for our colleagues. A source who wished to remain anonymous told the Glasgow Times, "I, like thousands of others, have been looking forward to working a tiny bit less, but 2 months before the next reduction was due, they pulled the rug out from under our feet. The decision stinks of disregard and a total lack of appreciation and understanding of how this will make already demoralised NHS staff feel. I am very upset about this. Successive governments take us for granted. Enough is enough." Matt McLaughlin said, "Neil Gray has blown any credibility and trust he had with the NHS workers. He has walked away from an agreement his government made in 2023. Reducing the working week would have helped retain staff. Unison has been working with NHS employers to identify and mitigate risks. Mr Gray's suggestions that reducing the working week could affect patient care and attempts to reduce waiting lists makes no sense. The NHS was under significant strain when the government agreed this plan. Have staffing levels and waiting lists become so bad under the Health Secretary's watch that he has to turn to this desperate measure? Hard-working NHS staff should not be paying the price for his failures." The NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde has been contacted for comment. This article was by Morgan Carmichael. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 19th of February 2025 from the news section, and the headline reads, "2 thugs seriously assaulted man on board Glasgow train." This article is by Ben Waddle. Police are hunting for 2 thugs after a man was brutally attacked on board a Glasgow train service. British Transport Police, BTP, officers are appealing for witnesses after the man was seriously assaulted on board a train from Coatbridge Sunnyside to Glasgow Queen Street on Tuesday, February 18th. At around 8 p.m, cops said the man was attacked by 2 men who were in a group. Emergency crews, including police and medics, rushed to the scene. After that, the man was taken to hospital with serious injuries. The force believes the group left the train at Carntine Station in the East End. An investigation into the shocking incident is underway. A BTP spokesperson said, "Did you witness the incident, or do you have any information which could help the investigation? Anyone with information can contact British Transport Police by texting 61016 or calling 0800 40 5040 with the reference 670 of 18th of February 2025. Alternatively, you can contact Crime Stoppers anonymously by calling 0800 555 111. This article was by Ben Waddle. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 19th of February 2025 from the news section, and the headline reads, "Update after Glasgow Road closed following building collapse." This article is by Ben Waddle. A Glasgow road has reopened almost 1 month after being closed following a building collapsing. Emergency crews rushed to Hyde Park Street near the Clydeside after the alarm was raised on Wednesday, January 22nd, around 3:20 p.m. It is understood that the building was meant to be torn down in a controlled demolition, but suddenly collapsed. Pictures captured by the Glasgow Times from the scene show a collapsed building with cars parked below it covered in debris. Luckily, no one was injured during the incident, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service has revealed. Following the building collapse, Glasgow City Council shut Hyde Park Street between Lansfield Quay / Anderston Quay and Elliot Street. Now, on February 19th, the local authority has revealed Hyde Park Street has reopened to all traffic. An SFRS spokesperson previously said, "We have received a call at 3:20 p.m. on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025, to reports of a building collapse at Hyde Park Street in Glasgow. Operations Control mobilised 2 appliances on a precautionary basis. All persons have been accounted for and there are no reported casualties." A spokesperson for Glasgow City Council said, "Hyde Park Street is now fully open to all traffic." This article was by Ben Waddle.
From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 19th of February 2025. From the opinion section, Susan Aitken, budget will deliver for City and its people. By Councillor Susan Aitken. Tomorrow, the SNP in Glasgow will put forward our council spending plans for the year ahead. Even in these toughest of financial times, our budget will deliver for the city and its people, putting millions of pounds into the services Glaswegians rely on and citizens have told us are important to them. Setting the budget always comes down to the wire and, at the time of writing, discussions are still underway. But the SNP is clear in our priorities. For the first time in a number of years, we have a financial settlement that not only enables us to balance our budget, but also invest in the numbers of staff delivering local services on the ground, in cleansing, parks, environmental enforcement and pest control. It will also allow us to improve roads, pavements, parks and open spaces, giving Glaswegians pride in our local places. Our very persistent lobbying of the Scottish Government led to them understanding the need to properly fund teacher numbers. That is enabling us to restore and maintain the numbers of teachers in Glasgow's classrooms, which has remained above the national average, even as we face significant financial pressures. We're also committed to maintaining our successful and popular holiday food programme, and will continue to put resources into helping alleviate those pressures deepened by 15 years of Westminster austerity, such as child poverty and homelessness. We'll make permanent the funding for the dedicated teams who've done incredible work in securing millions of financial support for often hard-to-reach families living in poverty. And we'll be able to add to the 1,000 or so empty properties we've already brought back into use, buying even more to transform into much-needed homes. Council tax is, of course, one of the ways that local services are paid for, but we're very aware that a lot of households continue to feel the impact of the disastrous UK economy. So, the Glasgow SNP will aim to keep any town's council tax rise well within single figures. Over the next day or so, discussions will continue to secure the required support for our plans. Even though council finances across the UK have never been under the level of intense pressure as they are now, I'm confident that the SNP's budget can make a big contribution towards addressing Glasgow's challenges. The reality is, though, that we're still making these spending commitments with one hand tied behind our back. The Tory austerity agenda, which is bankrupting councils in England and which Labour seems committed to retaining, continues to slice away at our resources while placing unprecedented demands on local services. So too the impact of rampant inflation on everything from energy costs to household incomes. And here in Glasgow, we'll be contending with the £1 billion legacy of Labour's equal pay bill for decades to come. The tens of millions of pounds Labour's discrimination against women workers costs every year has a massive bearing on what can be done in the city. Now, however, all of these pressures are being compounded by Chancellor Rachel Reeve's ridiculous decision to raise cash by requiring public bodies, including the council, to make bigger employer national insurance contributions. Labour has been warned repeatedly about the repercussions and the need for the Scottish public and third sectors to have the hike fully funded. By ignoring this call, the Labour government has left Glasgow needing to find another £10 million to balance the books, while pushing charities and grassroots groups to the wall. It wasn't so very long ago that Glasgow's 6 Labour MPs stood on an election platform, promising to challenge their party's leadership in the interest of our city and its people. Holding them to their word, my SNP colleague and City Treasurer Ricky Bell recently wrote to all 6, urging them to use their influence to persuade the Chancellor to change her approach. This is a £10 million hole in our budget entirely of the Labour UK government's making, and, as such, Glasgow's Labour MPs have a duty to make sure that their party doesn't shortchange the city.
As it stands, and entirely predictably, none have responded to Ricky. As they have been on the party scrapping of the fuel allowance for pensioners, their decision to maintain the 2-child cap and then denying the WASPy women their compensation, Glasgow's Labour MPs are stony silent. The SNP won't allow them to hide. We'll hold them to account whenever and wherever their party is doing Glasgow down. Meanwhile, with a budget protecting citizens and services, it's the SNP that's continuing to stand up for Glasgow. And that article was written by Councillor Susan Aitken. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 19th of February 2025, from the lifestyle section. Residents furious after council proposes to close park in summer. Report by Amy Miles. Residents are outraged at South Lanarkshire Council following their proposal to close a public park for over 2 weeks this summer. South Lanarkshire Council announced that if the Scottish Government approves, access rights to Cunningar Loop Woodland Park could be suspended for 16 days for a ticketed event called The Lost Kingdom. The park's play park would remain open during this time and local residents would be offered free tickets. Residents have shared their anger with the council on their Facebook page. One commenter said, "Chipping away at the right to roam to allow private companies to profit using public land that is not owned by the council, it's owned by the people who live in this area. The permission is not granted by us, the people who pay your wages. Never forget, South Lanarkshire Council, you lot work for us, not the other way round." Another added, "So a very popular green space is to close for over 2 weeks in peak summertime, when kids are off school, to allow a ticket-only event to happen, seems a tad unfair. The green space and park space there is a space used by so many, and with more housing in the area popping out without a garden or safe place for kids to play, to be closed during the summer holidays just seems crazy." A third said, "When the event was held there a few years ago, the parkland was absolutely destroyed. The event was also awful and overpriced. What were the council learnings from this event, and have they been taken into account so the park isn't ruined for the rest of the summer holidays? Again? The company that ran the event are absolute cowboys, and I really hope people pay heed and don't waste their money." South Lanarkshire Council have been approached for comment, and the article was written by Amy Miles and read by Ian McKenna. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 19th of February 2025, from the lifestyle section. Ricky Gervais spotted in Glasgow ahead of sold out show. Report by Amy Miles. Ricky Gervais delighted fans in Glasgow ahead of his sold out show. The Afterlife star was spotted in the SCC Armadillo area on February the 18th, taking time to chat and sign autographs. The comedian performed his show, Moratality, last night at the SCC Armadillo and will host another show tonight, February 19th. Among the fans was Ed Grattan from Stirling, who had Gervais sign an urn in tribute to the hit show. He said, "He was really down to earth, really nice guy, happy to sign for everyone who was in the street. He was a bit confused when I brought out the urn though. For a second he looked a bit perplexed. He thought it had ashes in there. I explained it was empty. I explained it was because of Afterlife and he went, ah, alright then." And the article was written by Amy Miles.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Q and Review and to tell your friends about our service.